one moment. Give me one moment. Wow, they just not really hitting me with the live. Wow, that's fucked up. Okay. All right. Alien Nation, 1988. Y'all ready? Here we go. So it's in the future, LA 1991. They have landed and now are amongst us. They're called newcomers. They're called newcomers. Newcomers are genetically engineered slaves. They're genetically engineered for hard labor. They traveled on what are called slave ships. They have no way back home. This is in the first 2 minutes of this movie. So the American people are upset. There's job loss. There's immigration issues. Ronald Reagan accepts the newcomers. He releases them from quarantine. There's a joke about a green card. They say, oh, there's a joke about Fred Astaire and Ginger Slag. They're called slags. There's Slag Town. There's advertising. There's slag hookers. There's homeless slags. Rambo 6 is in the theaters. Detectives Sykes and Tuggle patrol Slag Town. They see a 211 in progress. It's a slag on slag robbery. The store clerk is murdered. A shootout ensues. Tuggle seeks cover behind a car. The slag loads armor-piercing rounds into his shotgun and begins to shoot the car up. So everybody remembers the trailer when you see Tuggles is backing up as the impact just keeps getting closer and closer to Tuggle as he's backing up because it's literally going through the car. Okay, so he gets to the very end of the car and then takes it in the chest. But he dies. Don't get me wrong, he dies in this movie. Now the series, the TV series, that was a main focal point for the series. Like, how did Tuggle really die? So in the series, they said Tuggle died from another bullet shot from the front and not from the back. So there was this whole thing in the series about cop corruption, working with other slags, and Tuggle and Sykes had stumbled onto something bigger than what this in this movie. You understand? So either somehow in the TV series, Tuggle would have survived the shot from the shotgun round, but not him being shot from the front. This, you had to really know the series to know what the fuck I'm talking about. Because right now you're like, this is some bullshit. So I was really into this shit back then. All right. So then, wait. The slang over his Tuggle's killed. Sykes, played by James Caan, he chases down one of the slags. The slags then opens a vial and swallows a bunch of liquid, like dish detergent, right? And then becomes enhanced and then runs towards Sykes. Sykes empties an entire clip of 9mm rounds into this slag before it's finally killed. Okay. The second slag drops in behind him and tries to break his back before backup and reinforcements arrive. Okay. Sykes then goes out to as the officers arrive, there is a slag officer, and so out of his disgust and him being upset that Tuggle was killed, he punches the slag officer in the face out of anger. It says Tuggs was killed by BRI-7 rounds. They say a vest would have been useless because they left their vest in the trunk of their car before they pursued that 211. Sykes is estranged from his adult daughter. A slag officer has been promoted to detective. It's the same slag Sykes punched out the night before. Sykes volunteers to take the slag detective as a partner. His name is Sam Francisco. So they be giving themselves all these crazy ass names and shit. Listen, y'all know how it is when you come across certain groups of people that came here unbeknownst, and they have all these crazy ass names like, bruh. Okay, then same thing here. All right. They take on a murder case of a newcomer named Henry. Sykes then calls him George. He says, no, I'm not going to call you San Francisco. I'm going to call you George. So he calls him George. Sykes, because of what happened, it took him 16 rounds to drop a slag. He goes to buy a .454 Casull. Now, I didn't know this was a real caliber or a real gun, but the .454 Casull is a very real pistol. They still make it to this day. Where the fuck is it? Okay, .454 Casull is basically a 45 cartridge lengthened. Okay, let me get into this. It's called the Wildcat cartridge. It was created in 1957 by Dick Casull. All right, so basically what this thing does, the basic design was a lengthened and structurally improved 45 Colt case. All right. Now here's where here's where it comes in. Like, it was first commercialized in '98. The round is one of the most powerful handgun cartridges in production. The .454 Casull generates almost 5 times the recoil of a 45 Colt. So if you fire a 45 1911, you know it has a serious kick to it. It also has about 75% more energy recoil than a 44 Magnum. It can deliver a 250 grain bullet with a muzzle velocity of over 1,900 feet per second. That's rifle territory. Okay? Also develops up to 2,000 pounds per second of energy from a handgun. So this thing is mainly for medium and large game. So this is a real fucking thing. So this is what he uses in the movie to take down slags. All right, who knew? All right, getting back to it. So then Sykes goes to the police. What is it? Hey, what is that? The gun range. Goes to the gun range and he puts a vest on top of the target, and then he pushes the button back and he just fires the Casull, and it just punches right through the vest, through the target, through everything, right? So everyone's looking at him like, what the hell? And he's like, I'm not taking any chances with your people, blah, 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 blah. They killed my friend, you know, so he gave him a message. All right, so then they go see the bodies from the previous night robbery, one of the dead slags. George talks to a slag coroner about one of the dead slags. So they're speaking in their native tongue. And then Sykes is looking like, okay, so there's a secret they're hiding. Slags work in methane refineries because methane does not affect them. The plant manager oversees a batch of liquid that enhances the slags. So he's illegally making this batch of chemicals that physically enhances the slags. Okay? A slag named William Harcourt is being celebrated by the mayor. The slag from the robbery takes a drop of a liquid in the bathroom. So the one slag that tried to break his back from the night before is at this event. He's Harcourt's assistant. His name is Roger, right? Sykes and then George question Harcourt about his dead business partner, Henry. This is the store clerk not the store clerk, but the dead body, the dead slag from the case that they're working on. So Sykes wants to use this case to transition to make a lead into Tuggle's case. That's the only reason why he took George on as a partner, because he knew that he could tie the two together, he'd have a case. All right? So then, here we go. Slags were bred for adaptability. That's their strength. George learned English in 3 months. They eat their food raw for better nutrient absorption. Sykes and George go to a slag town looking for a slag named Porter. Sykes then knees Porter in the crotch to no effect. George tells Sykes a blow to the nerve plexus underneath armpits will give him the same desired effect as a knee to the groin. Harcourt then threatens slag Joshua Strader for not wanting to distribute his drugs. So now they're at the beach, and Strader's tied to the front of the car, chained to the front of the car. They're at the beach. And Harcourt's like, you don't want to do this for us? And Strader's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So then Strader refuses and is dragged into the seawater. It's like battery acid to the slags. And then Hardcore tells Roger to deal with the cops. So there's a scene when Roger and Hardcore are at the beach's edge, and the water comes up, and Roger steps back, and Hardcore's like, you need to learn to embrace your fears. Okay? Sykes and George then go to a strip club to question a slag stripper that's an associate of Hardcore. So then, so while he's questioning the woman, the slag woman, the stripper, of course there's the scene where she gets naked and he's looking at her and she's got the leopard spots all down her spine, and he's like, okay, aside from her big head, she pretty much looks like a woman. And she's like, hey, you ever been with a slag woman? He's like, no. She's like, don't you want to? And he's like, don't. He said, you're a prostitute, don't you? You don't charge for money? She's like, why would I charge for something I enjoy, nigga? I was like, okay. So then after that, Sykes begins to slowly bond with George and open up to George about his relationship with his daughter. So he's drinking alcohol. George is drinking spoiled milk. So spoiled milk to them is like the alcohol. So at the very beginning of the movie, when the homeless slag came up to George's car, he had a carton of spoiled milk. That's alcohol to them. All right. George tells Sykes he named his son after Richard Nixon. Sykes tells him to say he named him after the actor Richard Burton and not Nixon, just because. George then tells Sykes humans are a special people. A tow truck then tries to implant a bomb into Sykes' car the following morning, but George passed out in the back seat. He stops the bad guy from putting the bomb in the car, but the guy runs off and escapes because George is still drunk from the spoiled milk from the night before. Okay, George tells Sykes his wife is a progressive. They find Strader's body. George is nervous about going near the beach. The coroner tells Sykes about a blood test on the dead slag. George is hiding the results of that test. So Sykes finally confronts George in the elevator. He says, the secret you're hiding, what the hell is it? He says the drug is called Jabruca. It's a potent narcotic. In the mines, they were given small doses as a reward. So the more you worked, the harder you worked, the more you got. The more you got, the harder you worked. Okay? The dead store owner was an organic engineer. William Harcourt. So they go to the computer specialist and they run down all the suspects and the list of dead slags and the connections. So William Harcourt, Cecil Porter, Josh Strader, and William Hubley were all in quarantine together. So Porter was a chemist, Strader he worked distribution, Hubley was the cover, and then Harcourt pretty much killed them all for the operation to take over for himself. Okay. Sykes and then George then interrogate the refinery plant manager and discover the narcotic. So this is when pretty much George goes on a rampage and starts busting up the narcotics setup for the drugs. Okay. George then breaks protocol to go after Harcourt. Harcourt then presents the narcotic to a slag and human dealers for sale. So the slags know what it is. The human guy, he tries it. He's like, it's like this detergent. He said, that's all it would do to you. It's just nothing, no effect on them. But he says, to my people, they know the rewards of this particular drug. Okay. George then interrupts the meeting armed with the C4. After learning Harcourt had killed Strader, Cassandra, the stripper, she attempts to kill Harcourt. Roger then disarms the C4 and subdues George. Before Roger can kill George, Sykes shows up armed with the 454 and saving George. All right. Roger and then Harcourt escape in a police vehicle. A car chase ensues. So they're headed down the 110 South. They're going to the beach. They play chicken and they crash head on. So Sykes and George, Roger and Harcourt, they play chicken and they crash head on. So then Roger's unconscious, George is unconscious, Harcourt takes his shipment, followed by Sykes. The cop car Roger's in, it blows up, killing Roger. Sykes then corners Harcourt. Harcourt then cracks open a vial and consumes the drug. Harcourt appears to OD. Backup shows. The coroner takes Harcourt's body. George shares a joke with Sykes. He says, hey, I want to share a joke with you. He's like, okay, what is it? He says, it's the why did the chicken cross the road? They laugh. They share a laugh, right? A beat cop then asks Sykes about reporting a shooting. Sykes says there was no shooting, just an OD. So then George looks like, what the fuck? So then in the coroner van, Hardcore wakes up and then kills the coroner, the drivers in the coroner's truck. He rips their hearts out. All right, kills the officers. George and Sykes then discover the scene. George tells Sykes a massive amount of drugs appeared as an OD, but it's in an incubation as the slag becomes metamorphosized. George tells Sykes what would happen if humans saw what the slags were truly capable of. Sykes then encounters Hardcore and shoots him 3 times with the .454. No effect. Hardcore and Sykes jump into a passing skipper ship. George then catches a helicopter flight to catch the boat. Sykes then throws himself and Hardcore into the water. As Hardcore begins to burn, he attempts to drown Sykes. George has the pilot lower the chopper into the water to rescue Sykes. As Hardcore is still strangling Sykes, George wraps his hand with a jacket and sticks his hand in the water. And, you know, for an actor, he let out the most agonizing scream I've ever heard a man. Like, this is some damn good acting. So he sticks his hand into the salt water. There's smoke and he's burning. He's trying to find Sykes' body, and he's just letting out the most agonizing scream. So then he finally pulls Sykes out, right? He rescues Sykes, and then 2 or 3 days later, they're all bandaged up. And then George and Sykes attend his daughter's wedding, and as Sykes walks his daughter down the aisle, George goes to his wife, and they watch the wedding. Alien Nation, y'all. 1988.